We have a presentation too. Little. This is going to be a conversation. Very chilled. Thank you so much. This is indeed an honor. I mean, you've got quite the reputation.
Hopefully it's a good one.
It's all good.
It depends on the day of the week, right?
I love your the TED talk that you did. If you get a chance, go and Google it and look for Santa's TEDx talk. And in there you reveal a lot about, again, where you've come from, your influences and such. And you made kind of a reference to your sticky note on your computer.
Oh, yes, which is still there. It's a little crumpled up.
Should we tell everyone what it says?
Yes, it says, what does it start with?
Do not be satisfied.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do not be satisfied with stories. Unfold your own myth. And that really is the premise of like my existence, because I struggled a lot with my identity and who I wanted to be. And in the States, I was a minority of a minority, as I like to say, particularly being Muslim in sort of a predominantly white school and white town, and that sort of was difficult because there's a lot of images out there that are telling you not only how to be, but they're telling you what it looks like to be powerful, what it looks like to be beautiful, and none of those images looked anything like me.
Yeah, so one thing that came up when I was doing a lot of research in terms of your background, like the whole moving into publishing, what was your motivation?
Well, I love storytelling growing up. I threw myself into books. I used to draw a lot. I loved cartoons. There was always an innate sense of escapism, but also a way to challenge my imagination in a way I had never really experienced before. So for me, stories were a window into what was possible, and in what was possible in terms of what I could create in the future. So I never actually thought I was going to work in comics. I thought I was going to be a journalist, which is kind of different, but ultimately those are different forms of telling stories about the world.
Absolutely, and I think your impact too is just as much you would probably find as being a journalist, would not?
Yeah, I mean, I think our first way of actually understanding the world around us and being educated about the world is through storytelling, right?
Yeah.
We say it, entertainment and pop culture truly informs culture and truly informs individuals' sense of the world around them. So it's incredibly important to make sure we're telling the right kinds of stories.
But it's that whole breaking through in the publishing business, it's a fairly male-dominated business, right? Dominant business.
Well, comics publishing,
Yeah.
I would say in publishing proper, in prose publishing, it's probably the opposite.
Yeah.
But comics publishing is very male-dominated. It's a tough industry when you're a woman, at least a few years ago. I think it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
But there is this sense of, what do you know? You didn't grow up being a fanboy like I did. You're a girl.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm a woman, but, it has been difficult. But I've also at the same time have had a lot of supporters and a lot of allies who have encouraged my voice, particularly at Marvel, but in the industry. And they also understand that, voices like mine are what is going to make the industry and the stories that we tell just fundamentally better, because they're different.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, absolutely. But what was that first day like when you showed up at work? And this was back in 2000 and...
2000. Well, actually, so I started working at a small indie comics company back in the day before, and that was a very small company. So it wasn't necessarily male dominated in the sense that there was about six people. So it wasn't that big. But the industry itself, when I showed up to my first comics convention, people didn't know what I was. They thought that I was sort of like a model who was attending the show, because I was wearing, I was just wearing a T-shirt that said Virgin Comics on it, and they didn't really understand what was going on, and they just weren't used to seeing, not only like female geeks, but female geeks who work in the industry.
Right.
But I think that has changed significantly more so. Before, I think women were kind of props in the industry, and now they're actually making a change.
Right.
But it was definitely a weird time.
Now, does everybody know Santa's history and what you're known for? Should we tell them a little bit about that? Maybe we can actually show some of the
Let's show some stuff. There's all of the Marvel heroes. Hey.
Marvel fans in here, put your hands up. Come on. Oh, yeah.
You
There
guys
you
know.
are.
You guys know everything about Marvel. All right, cool. Well, we'll talk a little, but we can go back to this slide.
But Mrs. Marvel is the
So
real kind of-
yeah, so Ms. Marvel, her name is Kamala Khan. She is a Muslim American, a South Asian Muslim American character that I helped develop with G. Willow Wilson and Adrian Alfona, and it's a story based on some experiences I've had, Willow has had, but it's really just a story about a young girl from Jersey City trying to figure out who she is, who happens to get these really incredible powers that seems to have had a global impact, which has been pretty cool.
Yeah, the numbers, I think, when it debuted, it outsold print.
Yes, yes.
So the digital actually was stronger than the print.
Yes, the digital actually it was our #1 digital seller for quite some time. And then the first print, we actually ended up doing 7 printings of the first issue. The first issue printing, if you can ever find it, is worth a few $100s,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool for a comic book.
And you
So-
won. You got the Hugo Award.
Yes.
For best graphic novel.
Yes.
And also, U.S. The President Obama, former president, or President Obama, is a big hero.
President forever.
Yeah. But he's a big fanboy, right?
He's a big fanboy. He's a big Spider-Man fan. It's really cool. He's a big nerd. I was very lucky to present him Ms. Marvel and actually introduce him at the Women's History Month reception last year, which was really cool. I got to talk about my love of comics, the importance of representation in pop culture, and what we've been able to accomplish at Marvel, and and thank him for all of the great work he had done. But that was an awesome, awesome experience.
Can we talk a little bit about the Kamala story and how you how it arrived? Eventually, you got to the point you're happy with, because you went through a lot of different drafts, correct?
We went through a lot of different drafts, and I like talking about like the process as to how we developed Ms. Marvel. We always talk about, and I'll show you a couple of slides as to what the process has always been about. Oh, okay, here's the pitch process. So, when you're thinking about the world in which Kamala lives, we're talking a little bit about character studies, and do you start with a character, or do you start with an environment? And we always at Marvel, we're a character-based company. We start with characters, and in order to think about like how to develop a strong character, particularly a new one, you need a strong mission statement, right? So Peter Parker, Peter Parker's mission statement. Are you a nerd?
I don't know what
Does someone out there know it?
Only what his Uncle Ben told him what to do, right?
Come on, I feel like you know it. With great power
Well, that's Uncle.
comes
right.
great responsibility. There you go.
Well, that's what Uncle Ben said, right?
Yes, exactly. You're okay. You're possible,
all right.
Don. Yeah, you're right. But we think about that with every single one of our characters is what is that mission? And with Kamala, yes, we wanted to tell a story about Muslims and South Asians. We wanted to break stereotypes, but fundamentally, we needed to make sure we had a strong foundation.
Yeah.
And that foundation was about an individual with an identity crisis, trying to figure out who she is. And I think all of us in different ways have experienced that, continue to experience that.
Yeah.
And Kamala's journey is very much about her choosing and defining herself on her own terms. That's when we realized we had the kernel of an idea for a very, very strong character with
How
some
much
future.
of yourself did you put into the character?
Quite a bit, yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally it was it was therapy for me. I kind of baked that into Kamala. I think Willow put a lot of herself in there as well. But at the same time, it's not meant to be biographical. It's meant to be about a character that I think a lot of people can connect with in different ways.
And the character's evolved since then. You've done 4 volumes.
I don't even know how many. All I know is that we're getting to issue 50, which
okay.
is very cool, very
Yeah.
exciting.
But the character herself has evolved in that period of time. Started out more that kind of awkward teenager, 16 years old,
Yes.
and has, I think, in volume 4, saving the world and teaming up
Saving
with
the world,
her.
yeah, absolutely. Continuing to save the world. I mean, she's always going to be a little bit awkward because I think that's what makes her so endearing and relatable. Is that she's funny and heartwarming and lovable and earnest. So yeah.
But how different from kind of the character that was, the original character
Ms.
of Ms. Marvel,
Yes.
Captain Marvel,
Yeah.
was Carol Danvers.
Yes, which is back here.
Yeah.
There she is.
Yeah. Back in 1968, I used to have that comic actually,
Yeah.
the original comic
Yes.
of Captain Marvel. Someone's got it now, making money off it. But 1968 is when the character actually debuted.
Yeah.
But as a white woman.
As a white woman, yes, correct. So Carol Danvers, she's actually one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe. We refreshed her look, gave her a brand new look around 2012, I believe, and gave her a uniform which is more in line with who she is, which is she's a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
So her uniform really reflects that, and we cut off her hair, which was very controversial at the time. But we wanted to reimagine Carol Danvers. That in a way that was more true to who we think she fundamentally is, but focusing less on her looks and more on the power of her as an individual, outside of the fact that she had actual powers. She's been in NASA. She's a skilled combat fighter. She's at all these different kinds of accomplishments, and yet they put her in a bathing suit the first time.
Well, when she wakes up with powers, right?
Yeah.
The first shapeshift that she does is into the original kind of Carol Danvers, though.
So the idea for that came about with, when you are a young individual, uncomfortable in your own skin, and the concept of her living in Jersey City, which is right across the water from New York City, which is a character in itself in the Marvel Universe, and you see all of these incredible superheroes flying around, and they're shiny and stunning and beautiful and powerful, and all she wants is to be just like them. And that's really a metaphor for the minority experience, is saying, oh my God, I can't be like me, I gotta be like those guys over there. And of course the concept of her, being a fan of someone who is, the typical blonde bombshell, that's the Western ideal of beauty. Her wanting to morph into that the first time that she gets powers. I mean, it's pretty loaded, but it definitely says a lot about her subconscious.
Is that something that you were thinking as a kid too?
Oh my God, of course.
Why?
Well, because that's what I thought beauty was.
Stereotypes
yeah, the
in
stereotype.
general.
I didn't see any images like me out there. I thought that to be powerful and beautiful, you had to be white. And it took me a very, very long time to get comfortable in my own skin, to feel like brown is beautiful. And a lot of it had to do with the support and the environment I had, but it took me a long time to get past those obstacles.
Do you feel that where we are today, I mean, there's a lot of talk about diversity, there's a lot of talk about things that are shaking up in Hollywood around the way people are treated. Do you think we're making any headway?
I do. I think we are. I feel like it seems like we aren't, because there is so much dialogue. There is so much outrage. Everyone is upset about everything all the time. Yeah. But I do think we are actually confronting the issues that we have in terms of race and gender and diversity issues in a real way for the first time, because we have to.
Yeah.
Because we sort of dug it up from where we've been hiding it for decades, and people are talking about it. People are a little angry about it. But I think we have to actually talk about it and have real conversations and real dialogue to make that headway. We've done quite a bit, in the fact that we have these kinds of characters out there and that they're celebrated just showcases that there's a need and a desire, and that we're going to continue to keep having characters and stories out there.
But whose responsibility is that? Is that the content owners, the big corporations? Who's going to push that forward?
I think it's going to be a combination of really everybody. It's, the onus is, I will say, the Marvel logo is, the Marvel mission statement is actually Spider-Man's mission statement. Great power comes great responsibility. We do have a responsibility to make sure that we are telling, yes, empowering aspirational stories, but aspirational stories that are truly representative of the world the way it actually is, the way it actually looks like. So I'm going to put it on us first, but then I'm going to ask audiences to be partners with us, to have dialogue with us, to come and showcase their talent, because we're looking for that. The gates are open. We want to engage with different kinds of creators. We need different kinds of creators to tell the next generation of storytelling at Marvel, but it is a partnership. We also need audiences to support that kind of content. About 5 years ago, I challenged our audiences. I was like, you want female-led content? I need you to go buy one issue of Captain Marvel for yourself, buy another issue of Captain Marvel for your friends and encourage them to read it, because that's really where the audience grows. It's very much a network and a community that you have to build, and that's how we sustain ourselves.
And that's a big
yeah.
point, is how do you balance the push, the idea of balancing representation, entertainment, and revenue targets?
Oh my God! It's difficult. What I love about working at Marvel, we seem like such a big company, right? We've got, I don't even know, 1,000 employees, maybe, if we're lucky.
Right.
We have a lot of freelancers, a lot of contractors, but the people behind the scenes, there's not that many of us.
Yeah.
We build ourselves like a startup. And so because of that, we have these ideas that are very true. We're very honest. We're just like regular people trying to figure out our way through the vast Marvel universe. But we do believe that there's certain kinds of stories that we want to tell, and we invest in it as much as we can. And at the same time, we do try to do this sort of viral marketing, engaging with our audiences, engaging with these communities, and building them. We call Stan Lee the original social media, because he was talking to fans in a way that now all companies are talking to fans via social media. So we are still very much like that. We are about the fans and making sure that we're talking to them, and telling and asking them what they're looking for, but also hoping that they're going to support the efforts that we have.
Yeah. So talking about Stan Lee, he's in every film.
Yeah.
Does he have to be in every film? Is that part of his deal?
I feel like he wants to be in every. We all want him to be, and I don't think it's much of a negotiation there.
No, and I think we, as fans, anticipate that it'll be in there at some point.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah.
So in movies, let's pivot to movies and the discussion there. Obviously, we're starting to see some interesting plays. Wonder Woman, obviously from a different organization.
I don't know what that is.
Ever said, but I'm sure you saw it. What was your take on Patty Jenkins' approach to that character?
Yeah.
Do you think, and what Gal Gadot did, she did a wonderful job, I think.
Yeah.
Did that move the needle? Is that helping to move the needle?
I think, of course. I mean, we always say DC is very healthy competition for us. If DC does well, we do well, and vice versa. And I think it's important that we actually do support one another's efforts. What was done with Wonder Woman was an accomplishment, because it actually was a true superhero film. Fundamentally, it wasn't a female superhero film. It was just a really good superhero film. And I think that's how Patty Jenkins really portrayed Wonder Woman. How Gal actually played Wonder Woman herself. The fight sequences were incredible. The women were not sexualized, and it was very much about Wonder Woman leading the way. She wasn't passive. I'm incredibly, I was very impressed with what they did, and I think that it only opens up the space for people wanting more kinds of stories like that, and hopefully they'll get it with Captain Marvel in 2019.
Well, I was going to ask about that, but that's
Hint, hint.
but- okay. Well, let's talk about that. You've got Brie Larson, who is
I
a
love her.
blonde, white American woman
Yeah.
taking that role.
Yeah, that's exactly who Captain Marvel is. We've also flipped stereotypes with the blonde, blue-eyed woman as well in Ms. Marvel. We're breaking stereotypes left and right. But she's a really powerful person who has her own insecurities and issues that you don't really, or you're not aware of, because her life looks so perfect. But I'm excited about Brie. I so trust what Studios is going to do with that character. And what's really cool is that this iteration of Captain Marvel is only 5 years old. So the fact that there's a film already around her is incredible.
Well, I was going to say, looking at Kamala, looking at also the legacy you're looking to create. What would that be? And do you see that actually translating into film at some point?
I would love that. Yeah. I'm hoping what's been incredible in the last 10 years, Marvel Studios is having their 10-year anniversary next year. It's incredible about all of these characters they've brought to the forefront that Marvel fans have known and loved for a while, but it's a different way to experience them. And so they've been able to bring these characters, and I'm hoping they'll bring up the next generation, because what we're doing right now on the other end, what I'm working on very hard, is to promote all of these other characters, which, by the way, I'm going to give a shout out to, all of these other characters in the Marvel Universe who I think have such great potential, who also happen to be from all different kinds of backgrounds and experiences.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, ideally, hey, it would be great for Ms. Marvel to be in a film one day. I will say she's in so many other areas, in animation and games. So I do believe she has a future, and I do believe that all these other characters have a great future in the Marvel Universe. It's just about how much time we've got. We're going to keep doing it.
But then again, you're coming to the end of the first phase, it appears. I don't know how many of you actually watched the teaser last night or the trailer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was awesome. Incredible. It's just, obviously, all the fanboys went crazy. Yeah. But what happens after that? Like, will we then see some of these characters potentially? And are we going to see new stories? I think, speaking to a friend of mine who's a huge comic book fan, and his question was, when are we going to go beyond the older stories? We seem to be seeing a lot of the same stories that have appeared in comic books or other literature.
Sure. I mean, I think for fans who've been around for a while, for them, it's going to feel like they're older stories. I think for a lot of fans, this is brand new. I think they'll get there. I mean, 10 years isn't that long of a time considering the amount of actual content that they've been able to do. I can't speak to what's coming after Avengers Infinity War, obviously. Otherwise, I might get fired, and I don't want to be fired. But no, I trust in what they're going to do. I know that there's just so much out there, right? And I think sort of the Marvel universe is their oyster. So I'm hoping that they're going to bring up certain characters, but I know that they're definitely not done yet. Yeah. Lots more to do.
How do you feel about, this is a question we asked the panel earlier, but again, the traditional versus digital, but again, the old disruption that's happening in the space. It's happening across retail. You've got this retail apocalypse going on. How is all of this shaping your business again?
Yeah, what's interesting about Marvel, and as I was saying earlier, is that we're truly like this Marvel ecosystem where we have all of the different ways to experience Marvel content, and we are moving more into this digital space, and we're trying to understand it ourselves. But because the Marvel fan is so distinct, they know that they can go watch a Marvel film and they'll experience their favorite characters in one way, and then maybe go back to the comics and experience a different kind of story. Go to games, go to animation, go to different way, and they'll relive sometimes the same story again and again in a very, very different way. Yeah. But at the same time, we know that there is this area of, the way that people are consuming content. They want to have it on the go. And maybe they'll want a different story of Spider-Man, so we're doing video comics, for example. We're doing short-form content for kids. And then on the other end of it, we're doing more nonfiction content. We are experimenting with podcasts and telling stories via podcasts, because podcasts are really getting big in the States, and that's a different way to experience it. So it's an interesting creative challenge for us, because fundamentally it's about challenging ourselves how to tell different kinds of stories based on what that platform is.
But how do you recruit against that and scale it?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think it's right now we are finding so much more talent coming out of the woodwork. We have people who are novelists who want to come and write comics. We have comedians who think they have a really great show for a podcast idea. Fundamentally, we want Marvel fans, but we do want to be able to bring in creators who might not be experts in that particular platform or that medium, but who are really great storytellers. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to change it up as much as you can. I'm not too worried about scale, because I think there's so much out there, so much within the Marvel universe we can do. And if we don't feel like we have the right kind of content, we're going to make it up. We're going to establish a new character. We're going to tell a new kind of story. I'm actually more excited about it than anything else.
And you mentioned earlier about how important the fans are to this whole process.
Yeah.
What about parents?
Yeah, parents are, that's actually something that has been quite important to me for the last few years in particular, because so much of the work that I'm doing is about bringing in more fans, bringing in more female fans, minorities, bringing in younger fans, right? Yeah. Like, we're trying to figure out ways in which, what's your first introduction to the Marvel universe? For some people, it's the films, and then parents might not want to take their kids to the films. So how do we make sure that we're introducing Marvel characters to what we believe are going to be the next generation of Marvel fans? We're doing something called Marvel Superhero Adventures, which is sort of a stylistic take on the Marvel heroes, telling bite-sized stories about classic Marvel characters and introducing them to the newer characters, but with really strong messages, focusing on education, on challenging words, and we're doing that in different mediums as well, so that you have a different way of, handing off the Marvel characters and Marvel stories to to kids. But we have to be very conscious of it and make sure we're curating content that is accessible to them,
Right.
but also intelligent and challenging.
Do you ever consider the whole issue around screen time too?
Absolutely,
There's a lot of
yes.
that discussion, a lot of conversation around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to be mindful of how we're packaging content as well and how we're breaking down the actual, for example, we do a few animated specials that are 22 minutes and we'll break it down into shorter form content so that we can actually distribute it on different platforms.
Yeah.
But we are very mindful of that. We know that some parents only have a few minutes that they're going to allow kids to have screen time, so we want to make the most of it. So a lot of the Marvel Super Adventure shorts, for example, are only about 2 to 3 minutes each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
Oh,
but
I'm done.
before we're done,
Yes.
one more question. We have this thing at YouTube and Google where we ask each other one thing that others would not necessarily know about you. Can you give one thing that people may not necessarily know about you?
I started a dance team in college. It was a Bhangra dance team, and I competed all around the country, and we placed 3rd nationally.
Whoa.
I'm very proud of it.
Well done. Congratulations.
Yes,
That's
thank you.
fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Maybe we can finish off with a clip. Is that
Oh,
possible?
Yeah. Are you guys going to let me?
Can we have just how long is it?
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
It's at the very end.
It's once in a lifetime, guys.
You guys are seeing the entire design process of Ms. Marvel as we're going through this. Yay, Ms. Marvel. Okay.
Almost there, I think, yeah?
Almost, yeah.
She made it to the Avengers.
She made
I think
it to
that's
the
pretty
Avengers. Everybody loves Ms. Marvel. Oh, and here it is.
Whatever you think you're doing, Captain Rogers, stand down.
I know exactly what we're doing. And until today, I would have sworn on my life you'd be on the same side.
You cannot disobey the law just because you have superpowers.
You don't know what it's like to be different, to be hunted. You know what they call a guy with powers that breaks the law? A supervillain. Whoever's on my side better get behind me right now!
That's the way you want it.
Wait, why do I get home?
Don't do this.
Don't make us do this.
Let's do this!
No!
I do not wish to hurt you, but if it is a fight you want, you shall have one to remember!
Anyone else want to take Thor? Anyone?
Look, kid, we don't have to fight. We can work this out.
Owie!
This is a waste of our talent, Stark. We are leaders of men, not petty combatants.
Where'd he go? Friday, take a memo. Stealth mode. I have got it.
My wings!
Get out of there, you bug. You're not seeing the big picture, Falcon.
Wait! You were right. We don't have to fight. Sucker punch!
Awesome. Thank you very much, Santa. That was awesome. Thank you. And please
Thank
give
you.
Santa a round of applause. And you'll be around if anybody would like to maybe have a
Yeah,
chat.
I'm around wandering.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sana, and thank you very much, Mr. Don.